Welcome to the Harvesting Wisdom podcast. Together we explore the vast landscapes of life, delving into the rich soil of experiences, sowing the seeds of curiosity, and harvesting the profound wisdom that each episode unfolds. Welcome to another podcast of Harvesting Wisdom. I'm your host, Mike McMahon. With me today, Christopher Brooks. Appreciate you having me here, having come today and joining us. We are in our lobby here at Agave Soil, Seed and Water, or UFE. So welcome, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And I'm going to get straight into it. You're the founder of and creator of Basil Bottle.
Correct.
Which is phenomenal, and I can't wait to show everybody what you got going. You got a passion for sustainability and food accessibility, and you're moving into this urban farming space with passive hydroponics. And I never really heard of passive hydroponics. I have done hydroponics and do some hydroponics, and we're about to start it again, which is what you and I were just talking about. But passive hydroponics sounds way more interesting because it sounds regenerative to me, is what I'm thinking. But anyway, thanks for being here. Give me a little, I'm going to just do a quick background on who you are to introduce you to the audience here. Tell me, what that background was and how did it get you to doing what you're doing right now?
Yeah, great question. So I grew up in Las Vegas, and I was a foster kid, and I lived in over 40 foster homes, and it was an extremely challenging, traumatic childhood.
Oh my God, yeah.
It was, yeah. And then I first got into gardening when I was 13. So I had been locked up for 6 months in the juvenile detention when I was 13, and it wasn't doing good mentally, emotionally. And I was about to get out, and on the way to and from school and mills, I would see this garden off in the distance, and the wife of the warden had created this little vegetable garden by their house. Now, it was off limits, and we couldn't walk to it, but every time I walked by it, I would just feel a sense of joy. And so every day I would walk by, I look, and it kept me alive a little bit. So I was pretty dead inside.
Yeah.
And so I was about to get out, and I was on trustee status, and what that meant is you had privileges and freedom to kind of roam the property. And for my couple hours, I would just sit and stare at her garden, and from a safe distance, but I would just watch the bees, and I would watch the birds and the flowers.
God, talk about ecotherapy. What a story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so one day she saw me off in the distance, and she was like, "Hey, what are you doing? Like, where are you okay?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm on trustee status. I'm just admiring the garden." And she was like, "Okay, as long as you do it from over there." And then a couple days, I just kept on coming back. And then one day she invited me into the garden to help, water and weeds. And I didn't know anything about it, but I was like, yes. And then a moment really kind of changed things for me. So she had some marigolds, and she asked me if I wanted to plant my own plant. And I was like, yeah, I don't know how to do it. She's like, that's okay. So she pointed down at the marigolds, and she told me to pluck off a dead flower. And I was like, okay. And so I plucked it off, and then she had me take it by both ends and pull it apart. And then when I did, like 20 spike things came out, and I was like, what is this? And then she told me to hold them in my hand. And then she got a cup of dirt just from the soil, and told me to poke a finger in there and plant the seed in there. And so I did. And then a few days later, I came back and it was alive. And I was like, this is magic. I was like, what just happened? And every day I would come in and check on that plant, and I loved watching it grow. And just through that process of gardening and learning, like my confidence grew, my self-esteem grew, and I couldn't wait to go back and tell everybody. And so that was the kind of my first impact with gardening and farming.
With life.
Yeah. And then and I didn't do much, so I eventually was released, and eventually got out of foster care, and ended up developing programs for foster kids and homeless kids, and got a lot of laws changed in the foster care nationwide. And I was running the nonprofit. However, I dropped out at 11th grade, and so I didn't have a lot of education, and business skills, and I wasn't great at it. So I went off to college and ended up getting a master's degree in sustainable business administration.
Wow.
And so we were looking at business from all these kind of sustainable aspects. But the reason I bring that up is, so the school I went to was very unique in that it was vegetarian. So in the wherever they serve the food, it's all food grown by the students. And I really wasn't into vegetarian at that time, and I wasn't, this all seemed a little bit woo-woo, but I know I needed something different. And so there was a community garden, and I paid to get into the community garden. And so the second experience that kind of changed my life is eating a fresh tomato off of the vine. And the flavors and the enzymes and the depth just like blew my mind. I was like, what is this? And since then, I've been hooked on growing things. And before I went to that school, if you would have asked me where food came from, I would have said the grocery store. And if you would have handed me an apple with some, a dent on it or something, I would have been like, this one's defective. And if you would have asked me, like, what is healthy eating, I would have said, 2 pieces of fried chicken instead of 4. And so going to the school really shaped and excited me about growing food. And I would spend a lot of time over at the permaculture department with the students and just kind of learning. And I would kind of share some business stuff with them. They wanted to create business, so I would help them create business plans, do profit and loss statements and things like that. And so that's kind of my introductory to gardening.
Wow. So you brought up like so many concepts that resonate with what we do at urban farming. But right. So what started urban farming really was we started a community garden right over here on Central called Agave Farms. It was 17 acres. So to make it community, we built areas that were party areas. They were set up for event space. It wasn't a program, but it was a foster care nonprofit. And they had a fundraiser one night where they had 4 different chefs on the property, and they got a group of 15, 20 kids or whatever, each chef. And for a couple of months, they went foraging for plants, to make their meal. And they decided how they were going to design their meal. I didn't realize, but they went so bonkers. Each chef had like 30 different dishes out there. I mean, it was like so much food coming in, but what a great event. And they'd talk about, how they made it, what it was about, and then we'd interview each kid. And that was the first time I had even heard of really this whole foster care program. And, it was like, while you're there, you're like, oh my God, it's like everything you could do not to like start crying, right? I mean, that was the gist of it. But one kid was same thing. He was probably 14 years old, and he seemed overweight. Like, oh, you're eating too much. No, he's just eating what food that we get, commercial food grown that are fed to people, and it's you victimize a kid. But the kid doesn't know nutrition. The kid doesn't have access or the money to do, to grow their own food or whatever. Or they think they don't, right? Yeah. So, to me, it really opened my eyes up, and that we started doing gardens at schools and started developing our education platform, which is our primary thing. We have one of the kids stood up and said, "I didn't know food came from plants or from the ground." I was like, what? And then another kid was like,
I'd never seen a plant.
What's your typical, food for the day? Well, I wake up and I have donuts or cereal. It's box food or sugar straight off, carbohydrate. And then their big meal of the day is the lunch program at school, which people don't realize how critical a lifeline that is to so many millions of kids in the country. So the whole point here is that you got, that's the lunch, and then at dinner it's mac and cheese. It's another, so it's all high carb, foods, right? Processed foods. But let's get now What else? Anything in the past that drove you? It sounds like I know what motivated you. The beginning of watching life, that you were involved with that, with the seed growing and the taste of the tomato and everything. Nothing better than the tomato you grow yourself.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's it. And, you know, so that being said, now you got this program. Is this your main thing that you're doing right now?
Yes.
So tell us about that. Tell us about what you're doing now, and we'll go into passive hydroponics.
Yeah.
Tell me all about that.
So let's go into the hydroponics first, and then I'll get into Basil Bottle. So hydroponics. So the term is human-made, but hydroponics is not human-made. So think of kelp forest, right? So these plants are living in the ocean. Think of marine swamp areas. These plants,
rice paddies, whatever it may be. Yeah.
And I would probably I might even argue that plants lived aquatically before they came to land.
Well, I would agree with it.
And so plants can live without soil. So hydroponics, aquaponics, aeroponics, all these kind of words just means we're growing without soil.
Right.
Now, the Aztecs used floating islands in their lakes, and they grew agriculture in their lakes. The gardens of Babylon, the hanging gardens of Babylon, used water to feed. So we've been growing without soil for a long time.
Right.
What's the difference between kind of passive hydroponics and traditional hydroponics is, so for a long time, people thought you had to have pumps and aeration and water needed to be moving to be able to grow in these, to grow in the liquid.
Keep it oxygenated.
Exactly. And then in the 1980s, 1990s, there was a guy named Dr. Bernard Krake from the University of Hawaii, and he set out to prove that you didn't need pumps, you didn't need air stones.
Wow.
You could grow just in water with a nutrient solution, and it would be much cheaper, it'd be much easier to duplicate. And so in grad school, I studied all of these different systems. And one of my, what I wanted to do with grad school is I wanted to go to areas that were hit by natural disasters and help people rebuild. And so one of the first things you need is food, right? And so with passive hydroponics, I can bring water, I can bring some nutrients, some seeds, some containers, and I can get food going, right? These people, if they don't get food in a couple of weeks, they're going to die, right? I don't have time to set up soil. I don't have time. I might not have electricity. I might not have pumps. And so I was really, really attracted to this, and I started experimenting with it. And actually what I found is throughout all these different systems, I had the most success with the passive hydroponics. So the ones that required no electricity, no pumps. Now, what I have done a little different is I've started to add biology into the passive hydroponic system. So most hydroponics is, at least back in the days, it was a very sterile system. And you didn't need the microbes because the nutrients are dissolved in the water.
Right.
Yeah, they're able to access it right away. But what I found is that there's other processes that are going on between, maybe they're not exchanging, sugars, but there's in the rhizosphere and the biofilm, there's immunity protection, there's all these other different things. And so I started to introduce biology into the system, and I didn't necessarily understand how it worked. I just knew it tasted better, it grew better, it smelt better. So something was working. And so I started adding soil bacteria, aquatic bacteria, soil fungi.
And how did you do? Did you make an extract, put that in a liquid form, or did you just literally take
powdered? It was all powdered.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did you manufacture? Or you just bought? You were able to buy it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. You got a starter kit.
Yeah.
And that more or less. So I'm listening to what you're saying, because I'm still struggling with so many of these concepts, even though I'm just about wrapping up some books. But the reason I haven't finished them is because I still haven't quite gotten everything in my mind's correct. But we follow Elaine Ingram's whole concept of aeration and microbes and that kind of thing, and how the biology is what's doing all the work, right? So I agree with you on that. the thing is, then I started reading about Korean natural farming, which is the Choi family. I think they got 120 million people following their processes over several decades. Works very well, but that is more anaerobic.
Yeah.
And so it's like, wait a second, how is one thing working that's the opposite of the other thing? But they're not really opposites. They're just coexist, and they're just different ways of doing things, right? So as I look at soil is three things, right? It's a physical matter, which is carbon based, right? And mineral based. And then you've got nutrient, and then you got biology. But the orchestrator of everything, the builder of everything, is that biology.
Yeah.
So the biology needs a little bit of carbon to work with, maybe, and then it's generating all this, nutrient value. So when we say we don't have soil in your water, when you're putting biology in, you're putting in the main component of soil, right? And
I'm also adding, I add humic acids, I add
so you got some minerals. Yeah. So you got some extracts. And so, so you're bringing in those elements. You're just not in the ground. You're not in the soil in the ground, and you don't have maybe as much carbon. I'd be curious to see what the carbon to nitrogen ratio is, but I would imagine a little bit less carbon. And it works. That's the important thing.
Yeah.
So
I still don't fully understand it either. I just know it.
Yeah,
it works.
Well, I think when I was reading, and even Laura Ingham and the Choi's say, we know maybe 1% of what microbiology is. Like, we haven't discovered. I mean, it's micro. Exactly. There's a lot of discovery behind it, but I look at it as the essence of life. And so it's the essence of life for sure in the soils, but then let's take that same thing and go to the sea or lakes, and now you've got protozoa, not protozoa, excuse me, you have planktons and zooplanktons, and those are your kind of those basic things that then all the other bigger species, the predator and the preys, that are part of these food webs are active with. And interesting, I do a lot of cyanobacteria. We make our own, and I've read a lot.
As a fertilizer?
No, it's not really. So cyanobacteria is what was in all water, still in all water.
It's the blue-green algae, right?
It's blue-green algae. Okay. It's technically it's really a bacteria, not an algae per se. But I guess it could be a film. But it creates 28% of the world's oxygen. So back when we were a fireball of rock, that was like that first. So they say a lot of people theorize that it was the first organism, and from there life began. But it began in water, and then instead of it crawling out of the water, the ocean, whatever, it oozed out, and then it became the mushrooms and fungi and bacteria. Fungi, I think, was the first thing that you could see, but I'm sure bacteria always existed too. But we'll never quite understand, I think, that evolution. But it's interesting and you're saying, hey, I think maybe all food was in the water. Well, all life might have been in the water, right? To start
Originally.
it all. Yeah. So it's to me, these things are amazing things. So a lot of people like, who cares or whatever, but it is amazing. And it's the same thing with going to the store to buy your grocery. That's not where it started. And I say it to people all the time. 100 years ago, everyone was dispersed around the world. Now 80% of humanity's in an urban environment. So let's talk a little about this. It's not a project, it's an actual full-on business. Yeah. So you're going to have your website and everything put here. I'd love to we're creating a marketplace for UFE. Of course, you're selling your own stuff or whatever as well, but would love to put some of your stuff on our marketplace for our viewers, because it really is cool stuff. And I'm going to actually start. You gave me one of them. Yeah. So I'm going to start doing some of that as well. But tell us a little about it.
So what we have here is a basil growing in a wine bottle. And you can see the roots in the bottle. And this is Italian basil, and it'll live its entire life in this bottle. And underneath this gold
and by the way, it smells really good.
It does.
What an aroma of basil. Yeah, it's great.
So underneath the gold are these three components, 1, 2, 3. And so what you'll do is you'll put your seeds in here, and this mimics soil. And once it gets wet, it's going to expand and lock everything
like
in
cocoa
place.
core?
Peat moss.
Oh, it's peat. Okay.
And then there's a cellulose binder that holds everything together.
Okay.
And then, so you're going to put your seeds in there. There's a little hole. And if we just dropped our seeds in the water, nothing would happen. It would drown. Mm-hmm. So what I like to tell people is right now it's a caterpillar and we're turning it into a butterfly. So right now it thinks it's a soil plant, and then we're going to transition it to a hydroponic plant. And then this wick right here wicks up water, and it keeps this the perfect moisture level. So it can't be overwatered and it can't be underwatered. And from my experience, most people fail with plants because they either overwater and they underwater it.
Wow.
Now there's the nutrition element, but that's where I found most people fail. And so with this removes the watering because the plant's going to drink what it wants when it needs to. And so I'm going to go back over here. So we see this guy, it has grown out of the root cork, and now the roots are in the water. And so it's going to drink what it needs to, and there's a water level right there. And then as it drinks, this water level drops, creating an air gap. And this air gap allows so air roots are right there, water roots are right there, so the plant can continue to breathe and get oxygen, which helps with how the plant cycles nutrients and water and stuff like that. And then, so you can grow a lot of things in the bottle. So this is passive because there's no pumps, there's no electricity. And we're able to do that because we're allowing an air gap. As the water drops, we're adding in more water. So we don't need to exchange the water. We don't necessarily worry about the water going bad.
So you add water back in. Do you fill it all the way up? No, you just fill it maybe 3/4 of the way back up, so you still have the air roots.
So you're gonna take, when it's time to refill it, so let's go back to this guy. So at this point, we're going to let the water drop to the root line. And because we want all this to oxygenate, but we also want to encourage the roots to go down into the water. And so as we drop the water, the roots are going to chase the water. And so they start to expand. So your job is just to make sure that the roots stay in contact with the water. And when it needs to be brought back up, you're going to take a squirt bottle, any squirt bottle. You come over here to your refill straws, which are underneath the gold. Actually,
they're in there somewhere. Yeah.
And then you just come here, add the water. And then, so we have 2 straws because as we add water, we need to let air out, or else we're going to pressurize it and it's not going to accept the water. And then we also, because of the straws, air can exchange throughout the system. And if for some reason it gets too hot or something, steam can release, heat can release.
Wow. So this is, if you think about it, when we have biology in the soil, it's opening up the soil so that you can have filtration. Water goes in, water moves around nutrients, but as water is going in, oxygen is, being released from the pockets that's in it. So it's this constant transfer, this energy transfer, this
and then as the
cycle.
water is drank,
right,
it creates
and you
place
have
for
the
the
whole
air to
nutrient
come
cycle. So what is a very, very simple thing, you can get it right there. You have a kid do that and grow it. He understands how this whole thing started. Then you just say, okay, well, if you're doing it in a garden, how do you treat your soils to function the same way? And interesting enough, a shout out to my friend Angus Mills, he had a 50-acre experimental garden in California. A lot of PhDs working there and that kind of thing. They created a compost container. So everything they were doing was container grown, and that container, though, acted the same way. It got soaked. They had a little tray underneath, and they overfilled it that first time, and then it pretty much watered itself through this capillary motion that you're talking about, which is the best. But by doing it that way, he, I think, saved 50% on at least half the water. But it was a better system, and it did force the roots to grow, just like sunlight forces the plant to grow. And it's really an amazing system. And you can all do it in a bottle. So
Yeah.
I've seen several different plants that you've grown in here, which blows me away. I thought, basil was the thing, but now we're looking at tomatoes right next.
So we have our cherry tomato. So we're starting to get ripe. And this one is really fun. This one I created for folks who have never tried fresh tomato off of the vine. I found that there was so many folks that have not done that. And so I want them to have the same experience that I had that first time I ate the tomato off the vine. And what's extra neat about the tomato is it needs to be hand pollinated. So right now I offer 12. So I offer 9 varieties of basil. I offer a cherry tomato and then an edible flower.
Okay.
And to make it into the cut, they need to be very hardy, and they need to be able, if people don't fill the bottle, they need to be able to exist. They need to be, I want people to be really successful with this. And so I've only selected varieties that can handle.
Can win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So pollination, we have a tomato plant here, and we can see our little tiny tomatoes coming in. And each one of these flowers is going to turn into a tomato. And at the very top, there is pollen that needs to drop, and I think it's called a stigma. And it needs to hit the stigma. And how this works in nature is usually bees will come over here and they'll vibrate, and they'll fly around, they'll vibrate, and that causes the pollen to drop. And it's also done by the wind. There's some other factors. But since we're growing it inside, we need to hand pollinate it. And so how we do that is we take an electric toothbrush or something else that vibrates, and you turn it on, and then you just tap the very top, and then you'll see a little poof of pollen come out. And people find this fascinating, that amazing. They get to do this whole process.
I gotta admit that you forget about the basic thing. I know bees and bats pollinate, right? And hummingbirds, that kind of thing. And I know that I've seen slow motion video of those bees, like, I don't know, hundreds of times in a tenth of a second. But I never really put 2 and 2 together that it was the vibration doing the work.
Yeah.
I always thought it was the bee eating and
going in there.
That doing the work. And sometimes it is in the case of like the butterfly, the monarch butterfly, that's designed to go into a what's the flower
that red one?
No, they're growing. It's milkweed.
Yeah.
Right. Milkweed is co-evolved with that butterfly for thousands of years, and it's the only one that can go in without getting poisoned or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, there's some of that, but that vibration, everything has wings, right? Butterflies and bees and bats and.
So these flowers are too small for them to go into and really pollinate. Anyway. So bigger flowers, yes, they're
but the little ones, it's all vibration based.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so people growing tomatoes at home in their gardens, if you want to increase your germination rate, actually go out to your garden and take your toothbrush and go around and just hand pollinate your flowers like that, and you're going to have guaranteed
tip.
Germination, massive germination.
Super tip, great tip.
And then this is our tomato at the very beginning. So we're actually going to trim one of these up because we only want one. And then
kind of like a vineyard and a vine. You're cutting back everything except for the 2, the leader and then the.
Well, there's only enough room for one plant to grow. So this is only big enough for one stem.
Right.
But what we encourage people to do when they're planting these is put in 3 seeds, and so that way we're going to guarantee germination, right? And so 2 of our 3 seeds came up. So we're actually here in about a week. After I'm going to let them grow a little bit bigger, I'm going to trim 1 down.
Okay.
So that was the point.
That's the concept.
It's just too small for 2 plants.
Yeah.
To
It's
grow.
the same thing you'd do in a garden.
Yeah.
Just because it's growing. That's the hardest thing is for gardeners. You got to pick out the ones that are taking up too much space, too much nutrient, and too much root space. So Same concept.
And then one more thing I want to add. So after this is, after you set it up, you're actually going to grow this in your windowsill.
Yeah.
And, or if you don't have a windowsill, you'll use a grow light. But I wanted to make a product that people can grow who don't have access to gardens or yards, but still want to learn and still want to grow. Or let's say you're in the Midwest and you want to have basil in the winter. You know, you can't grow basil out in the
Sure.
winter, but you can grow this in your windowsill.
So
and
if
still
you're,
have-
you know, a lot of us just love our plants to death. Too much water.
Yeah.
You've solved that problem.
Yep.
But also sunlight, you know. Do you ever take the bottle outside for a little walk in the garden for a few minutes to get natural sunlight straight at it?
No.
You don't even bother with
No.
it. You're just messing with.
What's
mess
going to
with something
happen
that
is
works?
these, now you can, but now we're adding complication to it.
Right,
So
right.
I'm trying to make
It's a
it easy.
variable
for
that
folks.
could mess it up.
Yeah.
Window facing the southeast, northwest. Where does it matter?
So yes, it depends on the climate and actually the time of year. Here in Arizona, you want to avoid the west-facing window,
Okay.
just because it gets too
That's
hot.
so hot. Yeah.
Yeah. And you also want to avoid direct sunlight as much as possible.
Okay.
Now, that east-facing window is the best because it is the
It's
gentlest
getting morning light.
It can even handle some of that direct light. The south-facing window, you're going to probably get the most light throughout the day. And so with something like a tomato, it requires a lot of energy to produce these fruits.
Sure. A lot
And
of
so you want to give
photosynthesis.
it the most amount of light as possible so it can produce
So
the
each
most
vegetable has its own little quirks. And then
Yeah.
how about the lights, the artificial lights? Do you grow 24/7 with them, or do you have them on a timer where they have a diurnal effect where they sleep at night? How do you do that?
Yeah, I recommend usually 12 or 16 hours.
Okay.
Give them some time to sleep.
All right.
Yeah.
So let's fast forward because we're getting I always get the hook. But what projects do you see in the future here, and how do you see scaling this? How do you obviously put it on our marketplace? You're doing your own thing. It's a great tool. We can introduce it to the schools as one of our other forms of gardening.
Yeah.
But how do you see yourself moving forward with this?
Yeah, so two areas that I would really like to explore is the educational realms and
Okay.
then from the therapeutic realm. So the kids love watching this grow. They love seeing the roots. They come and check on it every day. They name it. For them, it is magic, right? It's that same kind of magic I felt.
I think all humans need that connectivity. That's my personal belief.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the second aspect I want to do is from a therapeutic aspect. So let's say you're a elderly person and you're living in an older folks home and nobody's
Sure.
visiting you, and you can't have anything to care for. You had a garden at some point. They can grow this in their windowsill in their room. They can grow it under a grow light. It's very simple to use. All they have to do is take 30 seconds once or twice a week, add some water, and so I'm really interested in kind of the therapeutic aspect of growing these as well.
Grow lights have gotten super sophisticated over the years. I know there's like there was like two different light bulbs. Now it's probably streaming light spectrum even. But any specific kit, anything pretty much work if you go online?
Full spectrum light is best.
Okay.
So full spectrum has the red and the
Everything.
blue.
Okay.
And the plants use they actually don't really use the white spectrum. They use the reds and the blues.
Okay. You can
Blue light.
find something like that online, or do you sell it with your kit?
I do have some for sale that I include.
That work?
It's just go to Amazon. Find
Okay.
They're pretty cheap. You can get them for $10.
Great.
They super efficient, and you can find ones that as big or as small as you need. Yeah.
And I was telling you that we have our warehouse back here that my ex-partner, he's running the metal shop, but there's still space there. He and I talked. He's actually an avid grower, one of our commonalities. And I said, hey, let's grow. I've got another guy who owes me hydroponic equipment, but it's not passive like this. So you and I talked about this. I'm going to talk you into coming down and helping us set up a grow system right here in our own warehouse. And that can be something we then take pieces of or take kids through or whatever to do the same thing. And you want to get in the education aspect, well, that's what we do. So jump on board. It's a nonprofit. Nobody's profiting by it, you know. So love to see more of you and all of your projects. You gave me one of these. I'm going to get a handful of them. And I know a lot of people in my office with soil, seed, and water and with urban farming, and probably with agave as well, are going to love this. Great gifts too.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
about
especially from
50%
somebody
of
like
the
us.
people who buy them actually buy them as gifts.
Yeah, it's a great thing to be able to do that. So I appreciate you coming today.
Thanks, Mike.
The beginning. So I appreciate you being here today, and we look forward to getting more and more involved with the stuff you're doing. It's great stuff. Thank you. If you've liked this, please subscribe. Really important to subscribe for us, but it's also great for you guys because we have a lot of cool things coming up, maybe product lines on our marketplace. We're streaming movies now from our Skyfire Film Festival. So if you can, please subscribe. Really appreciate it if you do. And thanks for joining in today. Thank you.
Thank you for joining the Harvesting Wisdom podcast. Click subscribe and like for ongoing insightful conversations. Explore our webpage for show notes and additional resources. Visit our guests' webpage for deeper insights. Your engagement is the foundation of our journey, and until next time, keep pursuing wisdom.